These days, youngsters stop and ask Ellamore Vale's David Marsh, what sort of car is that? To be fair, the van known as Street Legal does sport a Trans Am front end and a Jaguar behind. But underneath all that chrome and artwork, it's a 1974 Holden panel van. It's also the nation's Boss custom van. It won national titles in 89 and 90 and has just taken out a record 8 trophies, including Best Van, among more than 80 entries at the latest meet at Holbrook. It's been David's for 15 years and it's seen a lot of contenders come and go on the show circuit. Chromed from top to tail and underneath for good measure, it's powered by a supercharged 308 engine with a 4-speed gearbox, chromed of course. David occasionally takes the $50,000 van to work, but no one's game to park near it in fear of chipping the paint.
The task of opening the new wing was passed to the Premier's wife at the last minute. The Metherell affair kept Nick Greiner and the Health Services Minister Ron Phillips in Sydney.
The building is charming because I think it is a state-of-the-art facilities for the community of the Central Coast, and they no longer have to travel down to Sydney for a lot of the specialist services that they used to have to do.
The population on the Central Coast is rapidly growing, so too is the demand for health services. The new wing contains a range of services including surgical and maternity wings, a critical care unit and medical imaging department. The hospital will receive an extra $32 million per year to operate the new facility. The Central Coast Chief Executive Officer Neville Boyce announced his retirement today after 40 years. He's seen Gosford Hospital grow from 65 beds in 1963 to an 800-bed hospital today. Jane Anderson, NBN News. While the rain dampened the voice of these protesters, it highlighted the need for shelter. This is just the sort of weather when you need a roof over your head. However, refugees on the Central Coast are concerned that they may not be able to provide needy young people with somewhere to stay.
They'll be out on the streets in this kind of weather. Imagine being on the streets in the rain like this. It would be awful. I don't think any of us would want that for our children.
According to the people who run the 7 refuges on the Central Coast, they need an extra $220,000 from the government to operate them. If they don't get it, they'll have to close. Veronica van Bremen is now 21, but when she was younger, she had reason to stay at a refuge on the coast. She says without refuges, many desperate young people would be forced to live on the street.
The refuges should stay open so that these children feel that they've got a secure and safe place where they can go.
The Minister was unavailable for comment. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
He signed a sponsorship deal reportedly worth $2 million, but he has to earn that out of the water as well, touring surf shops waving the Ripcord flag. Curran has the chance to equal Richard's 4 world titles, but he's evasive when asked, can he do it?
I don't know, I really can't let it bother me all the time, but I try to do a good job.
The man who holds the record for being both the youngest and oldest world champion made the quarter-finals of the Bells Beach Classic. On Thursday, it's the Coca-Cola Classic at Narrabeen. And does his enormous pay packet put any more pressure on him?
Yeah, but that's always been like that, and hopefully it's positive pressure.
The 1948 musical, written by Rodgers and Hammerstein, became a Broadway hit. The story is set on 2 islands in the South Pacific during the Second World War. The Newcastle Dramatic Art Club is staging the production at the Roxy Theatre, with the proceeds going to the Glendon Special School.
More than 60 millimetres of rain have fallen in the Narrabri district over the past week, bringing hope to local wheat farmers. However, they don't want too much rain at this critical time for sowing.
I hope this time that we do get a period of dry weather for a couple of weeks now to let people begin to plant, and then some follow-up rain.
Many farmers are ready to plant their crops, and they're hoping for the weather to remain fine over the next few days.
What we've missed out on for the last few years has been finishing rain to give those very high yields that are available. It'd be good for 1 year to crack a good finish, so we can really see some large volumes of grain being produced.
It seems to be a different story for cotton farmers, who still have about 15% of their crop to pick. If the paddocks dry out soon, the quality of the remaining crop is not expected to be affected.
Yesterday, Wally the Wombat Taylor was just an average bloke, living in a caravan, enjoying a few beers, sometimes going out with his mates. But overnight, something happened to change Wally's life. Wally picked the magic lotto numbers for fortune and just a hint of fame, starring today on the midday show with Ray Martin. But Wally's already a big hit in blacksmiths, charming all his neighbours in his local caravan park. For the pensioner who couldn't borrow money from the bank and couldn't afford to pay his phone bill, the cash has come at a good time. With $1 million, you'd think Wally would want a few of the luxuries in life. Not so. He says he has some more important priorities.
20,000 for the Heart Foundation, 20 for the cancer research, and then what's left, well, we'll see.
Wally's also giving $30,000 to his niece and buying a new home for his 2 sisters in Mackay. The former rigger with the Navy is spending the night at the Regent Hotel in Sydney, courtesy of Lotto, but tomorrow it's back to normal living with his friends at home. Do you think a better bloke could have won it?
Yeah, I could have won it. I had 2 tickets in it and I only got 1 bloody number, mongrels.
It was an emotional homecoming for the players after 12 days away competing in the Asian Pacific Deaf Sports Championships. The men played 4 preliminary rounds, winning 3 and losing 1. Striker Stuart Clayton thrilling the crowds with 8 goals. The Aussies picked up a bag of trophies but missed out on a finals berth, losing to Iran 4-3.
It must have been frustrating, yet so close and yet so far.
Yeah, well, I thought it was going to be on my side to win it. It's just unfortunately the way the game went.
But still a bronze medal in the company of 10 international sides. The Aussies made a strong impression in South Korea with their open, creative play. For the players, it's back to local club competition, getting ready for the next series of international meets.
Williamtown's F-18 Hornets are already engaged in lead-up exercises for Thursday's war games when they'll take on fighters from the aircraft carrier Independence. The RAAF will have extra help. Some of the carrier's own aircraft flew into Williamtown this evening to even up the numbers. 2 F-14 Tomcats, the real stars of the movie Top Gun, touched down late today, accompanied by a less familiar warbird, the Prowler. The chance for a close-up inspection of the US Navy's front-line aircraft drew quite a crowd to the flight lines, and it was an occasion for aircrew to keep up with the latest in flight suit accessories.
Various other things in here to include some spare water, a strobe, and various other things that you need for survival.
The Prowler carries a crew of 4. Its role to jam and defeat enemy radar.
The back seat is the primary systems operators, and so they keep pretty busy. The front seat's primarily myself flying and the other guy navigating and communicating.
The aircraft will be on public display at the base from 10 o'clock tomorrow, when a bus will take visitors on an hourly tour from the gate. But before Thursday's war games, the visiting aircrew have another objective.
Have a good time.
Good on you. For decades, the workhorse of the ambulance fleet has been the Ford F100, but that vehicle is now out of production. The ambulance service has selected a Ford control van as the most suitable replacement, but ambulance officers disagree.
We have very little faith in a Ford control vehicle being of much benefit whatsoever for officers who may be required to pursue that line of work which causes them to drive at high speeds.
The ambulance union says a highly publicised crash test report by the NRMA was critical of Ford control vans and four-wheel drives. They say the report adds weight to their argument.
It's very timely, and it's quite noticeable that it points out that these Ford control Tarago type vehicles do have a poor track record.
The first of the vans has already been black banned by ambulance officers. Over recent months, it's been shuttled from station to station, eventually winding up at Taree. The ambulance service plans to introduce another 5 vans in the Hunter this year, but they may have trouble finding drivers.
We're not at all happy with our officers being exposed to additional dangers of driving vehicles. I think the dangers that they undertake in their everyday work is quite enough.
The international cast consists of more than 120 people. The show takes the audience on a journey around the world. The group is based in Tucson, Arizona. Members spend 12 months singing and dancing their way throughout the world.
The show has a lot of lyrics that talk about things that are going on in the world, about, like racism, peace, trash and things like that, but it's done in a fun, entertaining way and not a preachy way. It's more an organization who we want to spread understanding among cultures and break down stereotypes.
This is the last stop in Australia before the troupe leaves for Hawaii and Alaska.
24-year-old Carroll launching himself into the record books. 8.11 metres. It made him one of Australia's best, but it was not enough to get him in the Olympic squad.
Felt with my past record and my abilities in terms of international experience, I felt that I should have at least earned a berth on the Olympic squad.
The Jesmond High PE teacher spent 4 years training in the US. Overnight, he quit athletics.
A lot of the big fellas are sort of saying, well, you're doing the wrong thing, but when I was in the sport, you know, they didn't do the right thing by me, so basically the decision was made a lot easier for myself.
Now, it's a different ball game altogether. He wants to play league. He scored 4 tries in 2 games with the Newcastle side Wests. He also trains with the Knights. Echoes of Darren Clark. The sprinter did a stint with Balmain.
I'm going to make this more of a long-term commitment rather than Darren, who sort of gave it a quick spurt and found that he didn't perhaps take as much of a liking to it. But so let's hope it's a long-term experience.
No instant stardom though. He admits he has plenty of work to do.
I would like to feel that I will at least play a few games with the Knights towards the end of the season, and if not this season, most definitely next season.
Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.
The BP tanker overturned on the Bonshaw Road about 8 kilometres north of Ashford at about 10 o'clock this morning. Its 45,000 litre load of dieseline began pouring out soon after.
The truck's gone over on its side and ruptured 2 front and rear cabins, sections of the tank. The tank is only approximately 250 metres from the Severn River. We've built a dike to dam any of the off-running dieseline. The only trouble is, being such a clayey soil, it's running through the dike and getting further down the river, so we're going to have to establish another dam to try and hold it up a bit further.
Eventually they stemmed the flow and pumped foam over the area to neutralise the fuel. All up, 15,000 litres spilt out of the tanker, and firefighters say it will take a lot of work to restore the now toxic area.
The old tyre area will probably have to be dug up to a certain level because the dieseline will kill any fauna that happens to, and flora that happens to be living in the area. So they'll have to scrape off the surface and then put a new topsoil down.
The driver of the tanker suffered head injuries in the accident and was taken to Inverell Hospital, where he is tonight in a satisfactory condition.
Meet Pepe Le Pew, Chatterbox, Sleepy and Big Buck. They're all part of Robert Earl's gun rabbiting crew.
They're different than a cat or a dog. They have their own personalities.
And with quality like this, you don't take chances. Before he sends his ferrets after a bunny, Robert collars them with some high technology, a radio beeper which sends messages to a special receiver. What happens now? Big Buck goes down sometimes 5 metres looking for his prey. There could be a maze of tunnels down there, but at all times Robert knows exactly where his ferret is. The problem is a ferret could get trapped in a dead-end burrow and never come back to the surface. With the pinpoint accuracy of the ferret finder, there's no trouble in digging him out.
We can drill a little tiny hole in, put our hand in, grab the ferret and the rabbit. And sometimes we have got up to 8 rabbits.
Champions like Big Buck, however, usually weasel their way out, picking up a feed along the way.
That's all, folks.
This 250-hectare horse stud in the lush Yarramalong Valley on the Central Coast is evidence of a convicted drug baron's life of crime. Bruce Richard Cornwall, better known as Snapper Cornwall, bought the prestigious stud with money he earned from the drug trade. Following an NCA investigation codenamed Operation Silo, Snapper Cornwall was convicted in 1986 of having imported 2 tonnes of compressed cannabis. It's estimated his syndicate made $13 million from the sale of the drugs. Snapper Cornwall is now serving a 23-year jail sentence, but the profits from his crimes won't be there for him when he gets out of jail. Robley horse stud was seized by the Director of Public Prosecutions and put under the auctioneer's hammer today. Cornwall has also been stripped of his yacht, his residential properties and, of course, the contents of a Swiss bank account. The proceeds from these assets will be returned to consolidated revenue. The horse stud was passed in at the auction with the highest bid at $870,000. Interested parties are now negotiating to legitimately buy a slice of the former drug dealer's empire. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
When you play the game, it's best you wear the right uniform. An essential item for this outfit, steel-heeled army boots. The Maitland women's tug-of-war team has been training 3 days a week for the last 3 months.
Steady. Pull. Righto, call it out together. Come on. Yes. Push.
So an Aussie title is just the start for the girls, who will compete against 4 other teams from Western Australia and Queensland at Warilla near Wollongong at the weekend. They have entered the 520 kilo class. With 8 to a side, they're by no means heavyweights. According to the girls, it's all to do with style.
Trucks making overnight deliveries to Mulligan's Meats is a common occurrence, but sometime between 7 last night and 5 this morning, a vehicle backed into this bay not to deliver, but to take meat out by the carton load.
Well, in terms of numbers, there's probably just on 160 to 165 cartons. It's cartons of cube rolls, rumps, fillets, veal, that type of thing.
Police believe the thieves gained entry by tearing through the locks on the gate and the back door with bolt cutters and then went straight to the cool room that contained the cartons. The $20,000 worth of meat was to be distributed next week to Mulligan's 16 outlets, but the theft should not mean a supply shortage for the butcheries.
At this stage, no. I've organised more cartons. Hopefully the company that I deal with will hopefully have them here on Tuesday, so it shouldn't create any panic there.
Police believe it's a professional job. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
The plan to restore the pipe organ is already underway, with one concert held in February and another planned for this weekend. The organ was constructed by Whitehouse Brothers in Brisbane and transported to Armidale in 1937. Since then, it has played for many balls, christenings and funerals. NEG's music director Terry Norman and the school's principal Anna Abbott are working together to restore the instrument to top condition. The concerts will assist the school financially with the operation, which is destined to be a long one.
Anything's expensive dealing with an organ. Now, the sort of extensions that we have in mind, it's a lot of money, and it can be done a bit at a time.
Work will include the improving of the organ's pipes, console and electrics. Saturday's concert will see Terry Norman and his wife display their harpsichord talents.
The Mayor of Taree, Les Brown, is spearheading the move. Alderman Brown is calling on the federal and state governments to stand by Prime Minister Keating's inclusion in the One Nation statement that the North Coast Railway be the national freight link between Sydney and Brisbane. Alderman Brown says he's not advocating confrontation between the coast and the inland over the issue, but rather that the decision already taken is adhered to. He said it's in the national interest that the whole rail system throughout the country be upgraded as a matter of urgency to assist economic recovery. But Alderman Brown stressed that a better coastal rail link between Sydney and Brisbane would strengthen industrial development and the tourism potential of the region.
According to Professor Hawkins, the paper loss was not unexpected, some was pre-planned, and the rest occurred when the campus switched accounting systems.
When the budget for UNE Armidale was put in place beginning of 1991, it was planned in the operating budget to have a deficit of about $2.8 million. That was not exceeded. The other deficit which is being referred to relates to a change from cash accounting to accrual accounting, and it's just a consequence of that. It's not a deficit in real terms, it's a paper deficit which is associated with the transfer of the means of accounting.
News of the deficit came from the university's Northern Rivers campus in the wake of last week's decision to break up the institution. Professor Hawkins believes bursar Malcolm Marshall made the revelation in a bid to highlight financial problems within the university's federal structure. He says an understanding of the campus's accrual accounting system should allay people's fears.
In the method of accrual accounting adopted here, the provision had to be made for long service leave, superannuation, holiday pay for all staff as if they were all going to leave in 1991. And of course that amounts to a large amount of money. It would only come into effect if the university closed down in 1991.
According to Professor Hawkins, the campus is financially sound and any problems are unlikely.
The campus is in a good shape. We have an excellent system in place now of managing our financial budget, and we're confident that we'll be able to develop in a way which is appropriate for Armidale.
Trainers Association President Peter Eggleston met with NJC officials last night. Trainers are adamant they will not pay 80 cents to train at Broadmeadow. The Jockey Club listened, and the result?
The association has until 5 p.m. next Wednesday to come back to the club with what they feel is a fair proposal to, in other words, rent those two tracks each month.
No figures were mentioned. In the meantime, it's business as usual. Trainers have given assurances they will not jeopardise Saturday's meeting. Training will go ahead free of charge. The NTA does not accept that it costs the NJC $500,000 a year to maintain the training tracks.
I'd hate to make a sarcastic reply to that, except to say that the figures are contained in the annual report each year, and I can assure you that the $500,000 is a very realistic figure.
The Newcastle and Kooragang Island Risk Assessment Study was tabled at last night's council meeting. The report identified several areas for concern about worker safety within the BHP and recommended an upgrading of gas storage vessels at the Incitec plant on Kooragang Island. Incitec's proximity to residential and wetland areas was noted, but no blanket restrictions were recommended. The report identified new areas on Kooragang capable of accommodating further pesticide, petroleum, toxic gas and bulk liquid storage operations. The Mayfield Residents Group welcomed the audit on existing industries, but was alarmed by recommendations encouraging future developments.
Newcastle is seen as the place for hazardous industry. Obviously, the New South Wales Department of Planning, in the interest of state development, has got to find a good location for the industries that nobody wants.
A Labor Party platform in the last local government elections called for an exclusion of noxious industry from heavy industry zoning. Last night, the council welcomed the report as an important development planning tool.
It's information that we now know the hazards that already exist, and it becomes part of that vetting process. It's an asset.
That sort of thing is the sort of policy that they think will get them elected, but that once elected, they will continue to take industry at any price. And we think the council and the state government, and certainly the people of Newcastle, should have a good look at this and think about the implications of this in the long term for the people of this area.
They might just be the most expensive oysters you'll hear of. A $300,000 study has begun using shellfish suspended from floats off Newcastle Harbour, Burwood Beach, Swansea Heads and Port Stephens. Oysters filter up to 200 litres of water a day and can accumulate large quantities of heavy metals, pesticides and sewage pollution in their tissue.
The study will go for 4 years. Any worthwhile scientific study should go on for a number of years. You can get some results back in the first 12 months, but they're only a rough indication.
It has been commissioned by the Hunter Water Corporation to test the sewage outfalls and also industrial outputs. But for some people, such as Brad Farmer, the founder of the Australian branch of the Surfrider Foundation, such efforts on the part of authorities are too little, too late.
Well, they give adequate warning, I suppose, of some of the health dangers associated with swimming, diving, surfing and fishing off the coastline. But I think that more has to be done. Rather than just warn the public, they seem to be doing something about those dangerous levels of fish or coliform, for example.
The Surfrider Foundation is attempting to find middle ground between planning authorities and water users in the hope of arriving at solutions to problems confronting the marine environment. Brad Farmer is on a tour of the New South Wales coast, identifying pressing local concerns.
And Newcastle, being one of the largest and strongest regional surfing areas in the country, have a right to a better deal from the government relation to clean waters and coastal development in Newcastle. In fact, all the way up along the north coast, there are a number of issues that relate to the surfing community and the ocean users community that bear some action from the government bodies to bring about a better deal for surfers and ocean users.
That's right, the girls have gone gaga over rah-rah. The US has had unisex union for 15 years, the UK likewise. The Aussies are slowly coming round, the Northern Territory, Canberra, Brisbane, Armidale.
We're looking good as far as other teams go, we just haven't got a Newcastle contingent.
They've started from scratch, coach Wal Fitzgerald hammering home the basics like running, passing and of course the line out. Newcastle has 3/4 of a team at the moment and the call's gone out.
Netballers, volleyballers, anyone that's good with ball handling, basically you've got the skills to play rugby union.
Oh, and leave your mouth guards at home. The emphasis is on fun, not furious footy. Anthony Griffiths, NBN News.